welcome to another week of study session. So with the whole weather changing, it's kind of like interesting, the lighting. So we're gonna get it together. So inhabitants. Just in general, I know where we are in the book now. Like we still got a good amount to go, but I am open to like start kind of thinking about suggestions for the next book that we're going to do. I would like to say we could get a more reading done today. We'll find out. We'll see. If y'all got any ideas, feel free to leave a comment for future things. So we are continuing on with the book Ancient Egypt and Black Africa by Theophile Obenga. This is our text. And for anybody who is new or watching this with the pre-record, this is a weekly study group where essentially we read together, we have conversations about the text, and the whole point of this is just as Kemetyw, as practicing Kemetic people in the 21st century, we want to try to just kind of get our study up. Why, if we say we believe this, we should do our best to kind of study and know the culture, know the wisdom texts, and so on and so forth. So to kind of force myself to study, hence why we are here. So welcome. Is the music too loud? Is it distracting? Or is it just loud to me and not really loud over this? So, well, just in case if it is too loud, you can put it in the comments, let me know. So we're going to start on page 30. Oh, excuse me. Oh, got like a little tickler. All right, so we're going to start at the bottom of page 37 because it's like literally the beginning of the next paragraph. Okay, so good. So long as you can hear it, hear me and not be super, distracted by the music, it's cool. So on page 37, it starts out with, this primordial noon can be related to the abysmal water, but it is more like a fluid ether and not real water. This fluid liquid ether is the generator of the Neteru themselves and of the rest of creation. This noon is uncreated. Everything created emerges from the noon, including the creator Neteru themselves. There is not a creator nature independent from the primordial water. Conversely, inhabitants, Michael Chahudi, the creator nature will emerge of his own force from the initial noon, uncreated. The noon is the initial non-created, the cosmic beforehand, the universe before the actual universe. This uncreated fluid, ethereal liquid, very opaque, dense, compact, will be involved through the Demiurge in the process of becoming, the Demiurge himself issuing from the primordial uncreated. So we are now commenting on the pyramid text. Okay, so now I'm being distracted by my own music. I feel like it's too loud. So let me just turn that down real quick. 2 seconds. Okay, yeah, like this is a new station. I'm like, I don't really care for it either. So, but I like to have like, I don't know, just for me, it just feels like ambiance. Like I need to have some sort of music going in the background. Yeah, it's like, yeah, no, it's a new station, so I will definitely not be listening to this station again because I don't really care for it. It's like electronic. It's supposed to be a lo-fi station, but it's not really a lo-fi station so far as I'm concerned. But anyway, let's get back in the book because we're not here to talk about music on there. Hatap. So we are now commenting on the pyramid texts from 1040, 1230, and 1466. So like those are the sections in the pyramid text. So nature is born in the noon. When I was born in the noon, I am a tomb. When I alone exist, being alone in the noon. It is noon, father of the Neteru. So the noon gives form to the primitive world of the creator Neteru themselves emerging from the noon. So I guess it's just the idea that even the creator Neter, so even a tomb is saying like, look, this is where I came from. So I created in the noon when I was still Solomon. One can read this in the Brenmer Papyrus. The noon is truly that which is primordial and from which everything will exist. The nature, the sky, the earth, the living beings, in short, the global world, visible and invisible. The noon is the cause, reason, foundation of the principle. So, from the noon, there is being, development, and knowledge. The noon is the foundation and the home of all subsequent becoming. The noon is anterior to all that which is subsequent to it. It is the before, it is the after, and will emerge of the uncreated before. The Demiurge reigns alone, unique in this primordial uncreated. The Demiurge creates from the uncreated, from which he also comes. This explanation of the genesis of the world is still present today in many Black African societies. Here's a philosophical text from Kasi or Zaire, quite comparable to the Kemetic text. So this is like, we did kind of get into this last week, but we didn't really get into it super in detail. So it is quite comparable to the Kemetic text. At the beginning, there was nothing but darkness, and there was nothing but water on earth. In the chaos, Boomba, the Chembe, reigned alone. First, he vomited the sun, the moon, and then the stars. This is how light was born, etc. And then they had that comparative chart that we looked at last week. So with this concept, the noon, the Kemetic philosophers laid down the principle at the source of the very constitution of the universe, as it is known by humanity ingenuity. Thus was laid down quite clearly the radical unity of all beings and elements of the universe, emanating and created from a unique principle, a kind of fluid ether. According to the philosophical school of Metellus, founded in Thales, a former pupil of Kemetic priests, the ultimate principle of the world is not located in the chaos or the ocean or the night, but in the one which is precisely for Thales, water, the thing which the world was formed. So I mean, if we're gonna kind of do the whole science comparison thing, that definitely, when they use science, which again, this is why Menyet says, nah, the Kemites was definitely onto something. Like if we were to study science, they essentially say the same or something similar, like that we that life kind of came from the water, human beings stayed by the water, so on and so forth. So this doesn't mean like we're mermaids or nothing like that. That's not what Menyet is trying to say at all. Because I know some people might take that and go a different direction. But just the what's the word I'm looking for? The timeline, if you will, we are connected from the waters. In fact, in ancient Kemet, this inorganic but primordial noon already prefigured the universe by its dimensions. The cosmos is at the level of the Demiurge itself, the noon which carries a tomb and whose expansion is that of the sky and whose breadth is that of the earth. Thus the sun, Ra, rose out of liquid magma. So, then we got some more liquid. So even though it's not, like water, technically it's still liquid. Of his own will, bursting forth radiantly. Quote, I am the eternal. I am Ra who came out of the noon. I am the master of light. So again, we understand that as Kemetyw, we have multiple creation stories. We don't just have one, especially depending on which time period, geographically where you are in Kemet, you'll get different versions. We therefore have the following schema: noon or nunu, fluid, liquid, ether. Ra arises from the noon, Atum or Ra or Atum Ra. The ancient sun, oh, I hate the fact that he keeps going back with this Greek, but it is what it is. Sun god of the city Heliopolis, plunged in the primordial liquid with the latent nature. On the first day, Atum, out of the noon, brings forth the twin divinities, Shu and Tefnut. So Shu being like masculine, Tefnut being the feminine. The first couple created. The air and humidity necessary to life had thus taken form at the same time as the latent universe was given its temporal dimensions. Shu is eternal time, and Tefnut is infinite time. Oh, that's dope. And that comes from the coffin texts, that specific quote. So Shu is eternity, and Tefnut is immensity. Shu and Tefnut then gave birth to the spatial elements of the universe, Geb, Netra of the earth, and Nut, Netret of the sky. The Kemetyw thought that the earth is a male element and the sky female, the sky being fertile principle of the world by the fact that life-giving light lies within it. Geb and Nut had 4 children: Asar, symbol of the fertile power of the soil; Aset, the equilibrium of life; Satesh, symbol of sterility and upheavals; Nebehet, who symbolizes protection. I think it's, oh my gosh, I have so many comments right now. So just to go back, I think it's very interesting how he's shaping or laying all this out for us as we read. So the idea that yes, it comes from the water, but the first thing that comes from the water, like again, the noon and Ra, this idea of water and fire is clearly going to create steam. And it's just like, oh, wind and humidity, that, when you boil something or you put the little droplets of water in something hot, it does create the steam. So again, that's why I'm like, gosh, the Kemetyw was just so genius in how everything just kind of came together and just, even as we understand it now scientifically, it just makes sense. So moving forward with that, going on with the idea of earth, sky, but moving forward with Asar. Now, the fact that he's saying Asar symbolizes the fertile power of the soil, that's very interesting because, when we think of Asar in general, we never really think about him. It's not that we don't think that he doesn't have fertility going on. That's not part of his composition, but it's just interesting that that's how he defines him, even though we know all of the Neteru are multi-layered. And then he goes on to say, oh my gosh, where did I go now? Set the equilibrium of life, because usually people be like, oh, she taught weaving and she taught magic and she taught how to cook and stuff like that. So the idea of her representing the equilibrium of life. So essentially a piece of that would be Ma'at. Satesh he says sterility and upheavals. So when I think of that, again, if I'm thinking with a scientific mind, it's I hate to be a millennial with this, but I really think Captain Planet-ish with this, where I'm just earth, fire, wind, water, that kind of thing. So when I think of Satesh and it's okay, sterility and upheaval, I think of earthquakes. I think of deserts, and we all know that he is associated with the desert anyway, so that's not that far off. But it's just this idea of when we're thinking of the creation of the earth scientifically, you needed humidity, you needed the fertility of the soil. You needed, the right balance of these elements, kind of a thing. But you also needed, like, islands aren't made without a volcano erupting. Uh, like so it's like, earthquakes, things shifting, things moving. Even if we were to think about, like, within the womb, eventually babies are gonna move around. And for any person who's had a baby before, like, that's not the most comfortable experience. Like, that can be painful. But it's a good thing, because it's like, oh, okay, the baby's moving, the baby's kicking, the baby's pushing, so those are all good signs. So it's kind of like just interesting. Again, like, I could see it on so many different levels of, like, okay, scientifically, as human beings, as I don't want to say metaphor, but as mythos, like, it all kind of just comes together. Well, at least in Menyet's mind. And then we have Nebuchadnezzar, who symbolizes protection. So again, if I think of, like the scientific way, I think two ways. I think of, like, ozone, in a way, like that kind of protection. Because without the ozone layer, like, we wouldn't be able to, like, our temperature would be totally different. Like, the earth would not be able to sustain itself. Like, we need that protection. When we are in the womb, we need the placenta to kind of, protect us and stuff like that. So again, it's like all those just different levels. It's like, okay, Kemetyw with y'all intelligence. Like, all right. So after the cosmic order comes the terrestrial order. One can also recognize the mortal. I'm gonna spell it first before I attempt to even say it. Like, learn with me, y'all. Antinommy. Antinomy. I'm like, feel free if anybody's like, So, but, so the mortal antinomy between good and evil. So I imagine it's like the balance, because, anti, opposites. So that's kind of how I'm getting that. Feel free to Google or look it up and put it in the comments. Help me get out. So again, Antinomy. So if we are going back again, that opposite, you always need that ma'at. You need that balance. You can't just have humidity. You have to have dryness. You can't just be super protected but not have fertility inside. You kind of need all of these things going on at the same time, with the right mix. So when we say good and evil, okay, he goes on to say the Ennead is perfect. Atum, risen from the noon, Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, Asara, Set, Satesh, Nebuchadnezzar, created by Atum. Creation continues with that of humanity. So again, it's like you got like a hierarchy going on, but even within this hierarchy, they're all within balance of each other. Like, because otherwise creation's not going to happen. Like, with a woman, if she's pregnant, if her blood pressure is too high, if the placenta sits a certain way, or, if everything's not in a good balance, like, life cannot be sustained. So, and even with the development of a baby, you go through certain steps. Like, you can't just skip steps. Otherwise, that's not going to go so well. So, creation continues with that of humanity. The master of the universe created the four winds, the great flood or the inundation. So we know the inundation of the Hapi. And each man resembling his neighbor. This comes from the coffin text. This system, elaborated with great care, accounts for the genesis and the origins of the essential components of the universe. The initial principle, inexplicable, the noon, foundation of the latter universe, Atum Ra, the demiurge, emerges from the noon, creative, luminous intelligence, springs from raw, unorganized primordial matter. Advent of the cosmic order, Atum Ra creates Shu and Tefnut, he says air, atmosphere, and humidity, the eternal and immensity of the universe. Advent of the terrestrial and celestial order, Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky with all-powerful sun. Advent of the human order, Asara, Set, Satesh, Nebehet, good and evil, the balance of life, sterility, the fertilizing valley of the Hapi, and the arid desert. So again, you can't have one without the other. These images, these speculations, born 4,000 years BCE, in the consciousness of men and women of pharaonic Kemet, lasted for nearly 30 centuries, justifying the sacred solar kingship of Kemetic sovereigns, supporting all the rituals, notably those linked to the beyond. So solarization of the deceased. inhabitants Mentu. The image of the sun rising and setting each day is an extraordinary psychological power in ancient Kemet. So life is a perpetual renewal of cosmic, divine, and royal forces. Oh man, I have such a thought for that, but let me finish the sentence. Therefore, the construction of the, I'm trying to think of the correct word, the Tekken, or as we say now, the obelisks, Merkut, or what we call now the pyramids, temples, necropolis, palaces, always related to the all-powerful sun, life-giving and eternal. It's just so interesting. Like, again, when someone wants to make this argument, like, oh, well, what does Kemet do, in the 21st century? Like, it's not relevant, it's irrelevant, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, again, if we're looking at this as a blueprint to like our lives, our worldview, and so on and so forth, the fact that it's like, how do I say this? Your divinity, your royalty, like when we're actually part of a full community, like all of that is one and the same. You know what I mean? Like, people want to say like, oh, what's the purpose for my life? What is it? Like to be part of that is your divinity. That is your purpose to kind of keep this thing going. So, and again, that's very, very different from, here in the West where, I establish my own, I'm very like, I'm for myself, or I make my own decisions and so on and so forth. So, for some people that might be uncomfortable, that might be different and stuff like that. But again, it's just this idea that if we were to go back to this way of life, because some people will automatically say like, oh, I will have to subjugate myself to somebody else. I'm going to have to, I won't have my full freedoms and this, that, and the third. Like, I mean, let's be clear. We don't have our full freedoms as it is now. So, I mean, what are you really giving up? I'm just saying. But this, again, the idea that it's all divine, that it's all, because I do understand the concept, because I'm very much trying not to say like, we're not all kings and queens. People were never that way. No one, everybody isn't like that. That is a modern concept, this idea that, again, like this is even a thought, and feel free to jump in if y'all think I'm wrong. That's fine. I'm okay with it. But this idea of like, well, does freedom and democracy even really exist? I kind of sometimes think that that's not real. I think it's something we tell ourselves. I think it's something that was used as like a political tool to get the masses to move and go in certain directions and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, well, if I'm looking at it like that, as in like, this idea of true 100% freedom, blah, 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 it's like, no, I'm still, or most people, man, not necessarily just myself, but, most people, and we saw this because of COVID, like they saw how much they were dependent on the government for a stimulus check, how dependent they were on their job once the job closed down because of COVID or whatever, and a lot of people struggled with that. But, and it made a lot of people go through internal crises, and I think that's both good and necessary, but it can also be detrimental depending on the person. But again, to just get back to this idea that perpetual cosmic, divine, and royal forces, like that that connection, like if you're part of, like, okay, I know I'm divine, I know, this system, I am part of the system is me, and therefore it's gonna kind of all work itself out. I'm like, well, that makes sense to me, as opposed to like, I'm just floating in the wind, and I have this freedom that, depending on where I am, like, I could, and I know people, oh, well, we're sovereign, and, you can get your papers and this, that, and third, but it's like, no, the cops will still stop you whether you're sovereign or not in this country. Like, you still have barriers. So it's just like being part of a community that, has this kind of understanding, to me, is much more beneficial socially, politically. Like, it just makes more sense. So therefore, I'm sorry, no, I read that part. So B, the one and the many. So here's a text from the 4th century BC, which expounds on how the existent came to exist. The master of the universe says, when I came to exist, then existence existed. Kapuri, Keper, Keperu. I don't know why I'm rolling my R's. I know I'm not supposed to roll my R's. That is a bad habit. I apologize. There were no rolling R's back in the day. My bad. I came to exist in the form of the existent. Keperu, Kui M Keperu, Nu Keperi. I rolled the R again. It's hard to break that. Who came into existence in the first time. Keper M Septepi. Coming to exist in the mode of existence of the existent. I therefore existed. Keper, Kui M Keperu, N Keperi, Keper E. It's that thing with the period and then the I at the end. And so existence came into existence. Keper, Keperu. For I was anterior to the anterior's nature whom I made. For I had anteriority over those anterior nature. For my name was anterior to theirs, Pa Reni. For I made the anterior error as well as the anterior neteru. So neteru, Pau Tui. No. Pau Tuyu. T-I-U. T-U. Pautiyu. Got you. I got it. I therefore, so let me finish reading before I start talking. I therefore came into existence in the anterior era, and a host of modes of existence came into existence from the beginning. Keper Asha Keperu M Tep A. I made all that I made, Iri in E Iri Nebet, being alone, Wai Kui. I made the modes of existence from the force that is in me, and the modes of existence derived of the existent were in vast numbers, Asha Keperu Nu Keperi. I'm like, nah, let me just keep reading because I feel like he might get into this. So this text is complex by its form and its substance, aka you just keep repeating the same thing, and it's just like, whenever I see stuff like that, and I remember last week we were just like, it can be so complex, and it's just like, but again, the complex is simple and the simple is complex. Like, let me finish saying that before I finish that thought. So the concept Keper constantly recurs. Keper, to come into existence, to exist, to appear. Keper Jezeph, the one who comes into existence by himself. Keperu, deriving from Keper, meaning form, configuration, modes of being, the forms, existence, modes of existence. Keper, Keperu. Existence came into existence. Existence existed. Existence came to be effective. Keperi, Keperi, the existent. The young sun nature in the form of the sacred scarab. I'm like, let me skim real quick. All right, yeah, no, he does go on to explain, but it's not what I was about to say. So, excuse me. So when I'm reading that, it's just this idea, like, I can't speak for nobody else. I mean, Yet doesn't want to speak for me yet. But sometimes when some people are inebriated, they have certain thoughts. Sometimes when people go through, if not traumatic, big life shifts, and you kind of sit back. So in both of those instances, you sit back and you just kind of be sitting there like, what the hell am I doing? What is going on? Like, all of that. Oh yeah, technically we're not supposed to roll the R's. Yeah, that comes from someone who rolls their R's a lot, and because we're around that person, we roll the R's too, but technically we're not supposed to roll the R's. So when we have those kinds of thoughts, when we're sitting back here just like, you know, what's the meaning all of this? Like, what am I doing? You know, like when it's all those Keper, Keperi, Keperu, all of that, essentially the way I understand it, or like I interpret it, I'm really just thinking like, okay, I guess it's like a philosophical thing. Well, clearly, because a lot of the book is talking about philosophy. So it's this idea of like, well, how do I know I exist? Why do I exist? What am I doing with my existence? How long does my existence, you know, go on? That's fine. I understood what you meant. And then it's like, well, what do I make of this existence? What am I doing with my life? You know, we all say that question at least once. You know, what is the meaning? Why am I here? What is my purpose? So when I read that, it's just this idea of that 100% keeping it real with yourself, where it's just like, you know what? We all live in our own brain, our own skull. Like, the world exists because I say it exists. It exists because I have consciousness. You know, I'm alive because, you know, and if you read a lot of different philosophers, you know, that when they do kind of debate and talk about this question, they're really talking about like, well, how do you know that this isn't all a dream and you're not just some brain in a thing somewhere? Or how do you know any of this even is real? So it's like justifying kind of like what we're going through with this whole Keperi, Keperu and all of that. But then even more so, like, if I was to take it a step deeper, it's just like, not to say what does it matter in like a ho hum Eeyore type of a way, because that's not how I mean it, but it's just like, there were regular people back in the day that existed that we don't know existed. You know, like, we don't know them. We don't know their names, or, you know, like if we're doing ancestor work, we don't call all of our ancestors. We don't even know all of them. So this idea of like, what are we doing with this existence? How do we know we're even here? It's kind of like, you know, if we wanted to go one route, it's like, oh, none of this matters. I'll just, you know, jump off of a cliff right now. Clearly, I'm not going to do that. But, you know, how do I make meaning of this life that I'm living right now, that I am conscious of, that I'm aware of? You know, what do I do with it? But then moreover, like in the grand space of time. So like when they were talking about Shu and Tefnut being, I'm like, because I liked the way he said it. Eternity and immensity. Like we have one of the, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Thank you. Well, very well said. So one of the master teachers in the legacy is Afro-Latino and of in descent, and the first language was Spanish, so therefore the rolling of the R's just kind of caught on. But it's not technically it's not something we're in the language from back in the day. So again, all this idea of Kemetyw, Kepri, and all of that, because again, if we're looking at the coffin text, the pyramid text, and things, these are questions like after we've already transitioned. These are questions that our Ka is asking or going through, like these kind of philosophical ruminations, if you will, these thoughts. As it is traversing into the afterlife. So it's like, well, what did I do with it? You know, was I even alive anyway, or was I just this spirit floating around? You know, like it's asking itself these questions. So, and then it's saying, no, I did exist. I do exist. I matter. I'm important. I did stuff. I contributed, you know, and just to go back to what I was saying earlier, that there were regular people back in Kemet. We may not know their name, but look how great Kemet was. And again, that goes back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago, of when you're part of a civilization that is perpetually renewing cosmic, divine, and royal forces, you may not have to know every single human that was there, because that human participated, grew, nurtured this like wise civilization that all, you know, I don't want to say all because I can't speak for all people, but as historians is one of the civilizations that everybody looks to and tries to recreate and emulate. So contemplating these kinds of questions now while we're alive will definitely push us even further. And they're important questions to ask ourselves anyway. Like, as they say, you only got one life. So, like, what are you doing with it? So, from unicity will come the multitude, dialects of the one and the multiple, Wai one Asha multiple. The modes of existence deriving from the existent, so we all came from someplace, like we acknowledge that. I didn't say that a couple minutes ago, but I just kind of like assumed that we understood that we all come from someplace, whether it be spiritually, physically, blah, blah, blah. The existence makes the other modes of existence through love of them, Maruti. I'm like, I definitely said this a couple weeks ago. Like, we all got here because our parents decided to get down one day. And, you know, as much as we don't want to think about our parents getting down, you know, orgasms happened and babies were made because of those orgasms. Like, that's just nature. That's just how it goes. So the fact that he's phrasing it through existence happened through the love of them. It's like... Oh, okay, that's a very nice way of saying that. The existence is absolute being. He is also love and will. I could see that. It must be clearly emphasized that with the concept keper, to exist, to become, the ancient Kemetyw had some notion of the development of beings and things in the immense cosmic movement of the universe. The concept of keper is written in MenyetAnkhEnMaat, which is a sacred scarab. This sacred Kemetic scarab is present elsewhere in the African continent with the same symbolic value in an identical cultural context. A nicely carved box has a bulge in the shape of a scarab, the insect, which was created first and which engendered the others. There could be a connection between the importance given to the scarab by the ancient Kemetyw and that attributed by those of the people of Africa. And he's noting that that comes from E. Torday and T.A. Joyce Notes Ethnographiques, page 213. This concerns the scarab of the Kuba from central Zaire, most famous in the world for refinement and greatness of their ancestral civilization. The sacred scarab is the one who creates the multiple, which makes sense because if it's pushing along the dung and then the babies come out, so from one comes many. Same with human beings. One person creates another person, creates another person. So it all makes sense. This conjunction cannot be fortuitous, since these very Kuba of Zaire were, as we have seen, present an identical schema to the world of that of ancient Kemet. So now that kind of makes me be like, as Kemetyw, that might be, maybe we need to look into that group of people and their understanding of things. Just saying. Incidentally, since pharaonic Kemet, all African fauna has received a symbolic and metaphysical treatment. Ooh, that's interesting. The lizard, the cobra, the falcon, the eagle, the leopard, the hippopotamus, the crocodile, the horned asp, the vulture, the ibis, the owl, the bee, the bull, the monkey, baboon, and long-tailed monkeys, etc. are animals which were and are still used as symbols in many African communities. Here is a cultural and psychological macro structure easily identifiable between Egypto-Nubian Valley and the Hapi or Nile and the rest of the African continent. So, the way he says that, I thought he was going to have a chart. I'm like, that's not a chart. He just kind of continues with this list. So C, the knowledge of nature. Any philosophy worthy of its name is always concerned with knowing physical nature scientifically. How was it in ancient Kemet? Apart from its evident lyricism, the great hymn to Aten of King Akhenaten or Amenophis the Fourth, 1372 to 1354 BCE, denotes some scientific knowledge of nature. Again, why Menyet really likes Kemet. The sun, the origin of life. The sun Ra, in its solar disk, Aten, is the first to live, Shah, and all the rest is born, lives, exists because of it. Men, animals, vegetation, seasons, streams, mountains, work, and days. Although it is far, Wati, the sun nevertheless sends its rays onto the earth. Your rays are on the earth. Satut Kehertu. I said Hatu. Indeed, the solar radiance is powerful, for it only takes a few moments to cover the huge distance between the earth and the sun. The sun is far, but it remains near. Wati Henti. Akhenaten's hymn clearly says that the solar rays penetrate deeply into the sea. This is true. The solar atmosphere, which is the extension of the of the corona. If this was a couple years ago, that would not be as funny as it is to me right now. Of the corona itself, spreads into space millions of kilometers, reaching down to the depths of the ocean. Furthermore, this hymn tells us that the rays emitted by the sun reach our face, but the trajectories of these rays are not visible. Indeed, all the radiations emitted by the sun are not visible. For instance, ultraviolet radiations are invisible to the naked human eye. We can also read this: you create millions of shapes from yourself, but we cannot see them all, for they remain hidden to the eye. It is true indeed, beings visible and invisible are always creatures of the sun. So great it is creative power. A contemporary physicist confirming the Kemetic vision wrote, "The visible world is the invisible organization of energy." Heinz Pegel's L'Univers Quantique, translated from English by Jacques Codet, Paris, Intereditions, 1985, page 342 to 343. I have to say that is one thing I do like about this book, like the fact that he has the manual decodage, like right there for like when he's quoting stuff. But he also is citing everything like, no, okay, here's where I'm getting that from. Here's where I'm getting that from. And that's one of the, I don't want to say beefs, but that's one of the fake beefs I be having when people write books on Kemet, and then it's like, y'all don't got no footnotes, y'all don't got no endnotes, y'all don't got no bibliography, or in your bibliography you refer to yourself, another book that you wrote yourself, and then I look at that book and that book has no references. Like, I'm like, oh. I mean, respect, cool, but that's, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So definitely one of the things so far that I like about this book. 2, the green of the plants is due to solar energy. Plants, trees, senu, shenu, grass, semu, grow green. Oh, here he go, because now he got transliterations. I'm like, for anybody who know, that's what I'm talking about right there. I'm like, seriously? I was doing so good. Oh, wait, I forgot. That's the AK sound. Ah. There I go. Go me. Because of the sun's energy, this is true. Indeed, the green pigment of vegetation, chlorophyll, is only formed by light. So this energy of solar origin is introduced through photosynthesis in the great biochemical cycles of the globe. It may be conjectured here that the action of chlorophyllian vegetation was not known by the ancients as such, but it is really quite remarkable that Akhenaten's text should clearly attribute the green of the plant directly to the sunlight. So they be knowing. He's like, they ain't had the science we have, but they be knowing, they knew. The embryonic development of beings. For Aristotle, the fact that an egg, so little organized in appearance, should develop into adult with a complex origins was very mysterious. The great hymn to Aten puts this fundamental question of the very reproduction of the species according to the method of descriptive embryology. Here's the text. You make the seed develop in women and create the semen in men. You give life to the son in the womb of his mother. So the fact of reproduction is that the male puts the semen, virile semen. They didn't say just any semen. They said virile semen. In which the woman's body were the eggs, the seeds. MenyetAnkhEnMaat. For everybody else, that's M3YW. Okay? Menyet feel like she kicking butt out here because I can actually read that. Go me. I'm feeling myself. Kemetyw exists, which are then fertilized and develop. Sekeper, to develop. Causative of keper, to become. The fact is also that semen and seeds, spermatozoon, and ovules are creatures and fabrications of solar energy in man and woman. The embryonic development, sekeper, the becomingness, is clearly stated by the Kemetic, I don't know why I said that like that, Kemetic text. The developing organism is followed from the fertilized egg to the realization of a form capable of an autonomous and active life. You give life to the son in the womb of the mother. When the child is born, you appease him with what dries his tears. One sees the great hymn to Aten deserves to be read otherwise than a text of monotheist profession of faith. This hymn also shows an exact knowledge of nature. In any case, the institutions of this text are surprisingly precise scientifically when compared to modern scientific knowledge. What did we say? They be knowing. They knew. So 4, philosophy as a reflection of science, its object and method. Mathematics are generally considered as a science par excellence, whose object is studying the properties of beings, numbers, geometrical figures, etc., through the method of or means of deductive reasoning. Mathematics also study the relations established between these entities. See, again, people be like, oh, I hate math. Like, nah, you hate math because you had a crappy teacher. You had a crappy math teacher. If you have a good math teacher, like, math is bomb. Unfortunately, I also didn't know that until I was a junior in college. Go figure. Hated math before that. Indeed, in their conception of mathematics, the Kemetyw truly defined both the object and method of mathematics. Let us now read the relevant text, which is the very title of this book, copied by the mathematician Amos from an older text around 1650 BCE. Quote, correct method for investigating nature, for knowing all exists, even mystery, all secrets, author's translation. Rules for inquiring into nature and for knowing all that exists, every mystery, every secret. Translated by T. Eric Peat in 1923. Peat's translation is rather loose and imprecise. We can't compare it with the following technical vocabulary. So, look, see, this is what I get for feeling myself earlier. You see what this man just did to me? I'm like... He's like, oh, word, man, yeah, I know you're going to read this book, so I'm going to give you all the manual decodage, sis. Not even just that, he's also giving me transliterations. I have to say I appreciate that, though, too. So, Tep Heseb, correct method or accurate method. Chat, descent, M into. Study or research, investigation. So the human spirit must walk, hence the determinative of the course, the route followed. To scrutinize the real, he must get down into M, the facts, to examine them minutely and completely. Chet, thing, chet nebet, all things. It refers to the whole of the natural, objective facts, hence of nature itself, of concrete reality, of the palatable reality of the world. Renech, to know, to understand, to learn. Net nebet, netet nebet, all that is, all that exists. It is the full reality, the totality of what is the world, the nature, the universe, with all its curiosities, all of its wonders, and all of its enigmas. Senket or Seneket, obscurity, mystery. This one's going to give me a second. Anytime I see one of the words with the 3 in it, I just be like, ooh, pause. We need a second here. Steacht. I'm going to show y'all I'm like, just in case, so yet saying it wrong, you at least could visually see it. So this is what I'm trying to say right here. So it's ST3T. But his manual decodage is saying shatat. I don't know how, I'm like, where you get that E and the H and where you getting that from? Thank you. I appreciate the hearts. Feel my pain. Send me love because I need it. I'm trying. Thank you. Dua Nahem. All right. So that is a noun. So sheta, mysterious or secret, hidden, difficult. Shetau, secrets or religious mysteries. So for the ancient Kemetyw mathematics, Renchet, dealing with and studying the entirety of nature, concrete reality, as well as the enigmas and mysteries of the universe, it is a reflexive effort, a scientific investigation. So thanks to reason or het, to know or knowledge, the man who applies mathematics to scientific research in nature can consequently succeed in smoothing the difficulties, the mysteries, the obscurities of the unknown. Yet again, when people be like, oh, that Kemetic stuff, oh, that's not the real, that's not this, that, and that, like, beloved, nah, you're bugging. Like, they spent thousands of years studying. And we're just talking about, like, dynastic history. We're not even talking about like pre-dynastic, stuff. So that's even longer amount of time of getting knowledge, applying knowledge, watching, observing, documenting, calculating, trying, all of that. They did all of that. And also we could live life smoothing the difficulties of the mysteries, obscurities, and the unknown. AKA, you don't gotta go out here and be misled, taken advantage of, make all these mistakes. I mean, human beings are gonna make mistakes. That's just, part of the bag. But the point is, you got like the playbook. They made the playbook. So why wouldn't we do that? Why would I just sit here and be like, please get better, when I could just, mathematics says I got to do this, that, and the third. AKA when Menyet says mathematics, I mean, use complex thought and deductive reasoning. Like that, when I say mathematics, that's how I be thinking. So I had to turn off my alarm, y'all. My bad. Pardon. So I'm like, how far are we from the end? Oh, we're almost done with this chapter. So we're going to finish this chapter. So bear with me. We're going to go a couple minutes over time just so we could finish this chapter. So the palpable reality of the world, the enigmas of the universe, the mysteries, all of these can be studied by man according to a proper method, exact, rigorous, which can only be the mathematical method. All must be submitted to mathematical research. The light of intelligence must remove all the difficulties through mathematics, through the power of number, through the science, of number. Man can succeed in unveiling all of nature's secrets. That was the one where we talking about Sheshet Nebet. To sum up, the masterful thought contained in the Rhine mathematical papyrus is that mathematical science must be engaged in the methodical operational control of the physical environment while retaining a technical approach to explaining things. So we got to understand this, and we have to actually follow a method. That whole idea of I do what I want, that whole individualistic thing, again, we go... Turn the pages back. Let's go. What were we saying earlier? Perpetual renewal of cosmic, divine, and royal forces. When we are part of that, we do all this studying. And we bring it all together so we don't have to go through the difficulties, mysteries, and obscurities of the unknown. Yeah, no, that was my alarm. My bad. I'm sorry. The method Tep-Heseb matters very much. How we do things matters. Not I feel like this, my emotions say that, all that other stuff. Like, no, how we do stuff matters. Now, if we don't know, if we have ignorance, and I don't mean that in the negative way, I mean, we truly by definition don't know, then okay. If it's through the ignorance, it is what it is. The Kemetyw had to go through ignorance to get the method. So if we got to go through some ignorance to get to the method, it is what it is. So it imposes rules. Stuff people these days be having super beef with, which are the set of rules of methods for knowing nature. So Tep-Heseb, for knowing, Reket, nature, Chet, in all its visible, invisible, and hidden. Sheta, aspects and phenomena. It is a highly scientific mind which gives itself to an exact method by which to investigate nature. So again, we got to have that discipline. If we're going to say we're Kemetyw, we following the method. We are studying. We are, and again, our humanness is going to get us, and that's okay. But it's the idea that at least 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10, we are sticking to the method. We know this. You know what? I don't have to go through that nonsense over there because boom, boom, boom. We got the cheat codes. Like if you've ever played video games, you're up, down, and X, 0, X, circle, circle. Like, put the cheat code in. You don't gotta go through all the heartbreak, the trauma, all that other stuff. You don't gotta do it. Got the cheat codes. The method postulated here is an authentic Kemetic text as an essential element of research, knowledge, and of science. So this text clearly stresses that method is required in scientific activity, and this rigorous method, par excellence, can only be mathematics. There is no doubt that by going further beyond the direct perception of plurality, the Rhine Papyrus already clearly reveals a perception of the logical aspect of numbers. Indeed, with a method, one parts more and more with common popular opinion, aka if we are Kemites, we can't do the popular thing, we can't follow all the trends, we can't do like everybody else because we know better. We got the cheat code. So we supposed to be up here. We're not supposed to be, not to say we can't chill with other people and being elitists and this, that, and third, although there are some people who, likes to say that that's how we are, and there are some people who like to pretend that, but that's not, that's not the wave. Indeed, with a method, one parts more and more with common popular opinion. So in the whole of Mediterranean antiquity, the ancient Kemetyw were the first to praise the scientific ideal of mathematics. So that whole business of, I don't like math, or having bad finances and all, that's not it. That's not it. That we can't be doing that. Pythagoras, 6th century BCE, who spent a long time studying in Kemet, directly owes to Kemet his mathematical philosophy, where numbers is considered as a matter and the form of the universe. Diophantes of Alexandria, 325 to 410, reaffirms that this Kemetic ideal of mathematics in the dedication to Dionysius, Bishop of Alexandria, in his Arithmetic. I started with an explanation of nature and the power of numbers. So again, even outsiders came in, got the little bit of information, even though they didn't get full information. And they, when we go to school, we learn about the Pythagorean theorem, a squared, b squared equals c squared, all that good stuff. Now, it would be nice if they would have taught us some of the stuff out the Rhine Papyrus, but, that's for us to, institute for ourselves. We don't got to worry about other people educating us no more. So, hence why we're here. So we could talk about African philosophy of the Pharaonic period for ages, but space does not permit. During the course of this essay, we have only highlighted a few concepts and themes of ancient Kemetic philosophy. We did not mention the notion of Ma'at, which sums up the moral code of ancient Kemet. The Kemetyw of antiquity also discoursed at length on time, immortality, and eternity. The power of the creative word appears for the first time very explicitly in ancient Kemet. We know that Plato, the Greek philosopher of eternal, unalterable ideas of the absolute good, praised Kemet pedagogy, and especially the arts, music, dance, painting, sculpture, because of their sacred character. Not just that looks dope. It had a meaning, it had a purpose, it had a function. Because of their sacred character and their immemorable temporal dimension, it is worth remembering as an introduction to the questions that will be posed that we have raised the following points. 1. The matter of African philosophy, the cultural and historical content of such a question will still feed so many unnecessary academic polemics. I'm like, Google that one. I don't know what that word means. Menyet gotta Google that one. Oh, okay. Context clues, though, help me understand that one. So, correct me if I'm wrong. So if we want to really get into African philosophy, we got to understand the culture and we got to understand the history. When we understand the culture, when we understand the history, it'll help us figure out the here and now. and the nonsense we be going through. So 2, African philosophy during Pharaonic period by drafting a methodology and by giving examples of the documentation, for it is necessary to require a minimum of technical knowledge when one speaks of African philosophy and Pharaonic times, aka stop listening to some of these folks out here who, you know, there are some people who know their history but don't know the culture, or some people who kind of know the culture but don't really know the history, or you got some people who they got some culture, they got some history, but then they're all about their own interpretation of it. So we kind of talked about that last week about, like, you know, when we're starting out, like what we're looking for. So that. 3, a few concepts and themes from Kemetic philosophy, the notion of the uncreated noon, from which the world will take shape through the creative action of the Demiurge, Ra, or Atum Ra, the dialects of the one and the many, when we saw how the existent came into existence, and how existence existed by fact of coming into existence of the existent, aka you was born from your mama and one day you was like, wow, I'm a human being. I exist. I have thoughts, feelings, and emotions. What am I going to do with my existence now? The knowledge of nature when with the reading of the great hymn of Aten, the king of Akhenaten. The Kemetic reflection regarding mathematics, which are considered the most appropriate means by which to know nature and all its mysteries. Woo! We're about to be on the next chapter. So, the next chapter is the African origin of philosophy. We're going to get into that next week. That seems like, I'm like looking at all of this. This is definitely going to be more than next week. We're going to have to break this into, yeah, that goes from page 50 to page, so it's 51 pages long. So we're going to have to cut that up into other pieces. But it should give us some awesome topics to kind of cut apart, talk about. So that is it. This is our book, Ancient Egypt and Black Africa by Theophile Obenga. This is what we're reading. This is what we will be back next week to be reading again. So again, if you are new, feel free to follow, follow on YouTube, come over to our Facebook group, Kemetic Living in the 21st Century. It is a private group where we kind of just get into more topics, share information, so on and so forth. Excuse me. Feel free to visit my blog over at MenyetAnkhEnMaat.com, as well as on YouTube. I will be starting in October, aka, well, not tomorrow, but over the weekend, uploading weekly videos over there on various topics. So, as I said before, if you have any suggestions for the next book we should read for study session, feel free to send me a message. And until next week, Amatu Panatir, Sawik to Menten Panatir, Out Udwa Uma, Keti Paheru. Give yourself to nature daily, keep yourself in nature daily, and may tomorrow be as today. Have an excellent week and stay safe. MenyetAnkhEnMaat.
We the reflection of our ancestors. We like to thank you for the building blocks you left us. As your spirit possessed us, yo, you blessed us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.